And hello, everybody. We are today looking into Unit 2, Section 1, the Silk Roads. We'll also be talking about the Indian Ocean trade route and Trans-Saharan route and what role the Mongols played in all of this in subsequent videos. So what we're going to be looking at today is what is the causes and effects of the growth of these networks of exchange after 1200. And the Silk Road is the big one. It's a very lucrative trade route named after the product that it's famous for. And the it's going to help the Han Dynasty seeking allies in the West to help them fight against, enemies, but also to build up their wealth. And it becomes a tremendous trade route. It dates well back into before the Christian era, and it didn't just carry silk, but that was the main thing they traded. They traded porcelain, spices, other things, but also importantly, they're trading culture. They're trading religion. They're also trading technology, and they'll be trading disease. So let's go ahead and look at some examples of here. We have a map here of the Silk Road, the Silk Roads, and you can see it's a road network. It's interlacing from China, from East Asia, and it's going through Central Asia. It goes south towards South Asia, to India, and it's connected with a lot of the ports. And then it ends basically in two places, Cairo and Constantinople. Um, Vijayanagar, which is in India, is one of the largest parts, but the endpoint Cairo also is very large with a large population of about 500,000. And Constantinople is smaller with about 200,000 people. Okay, so that's the basics of the geography. Some of the people you want to become familiar with or make sure you remain familiar. Genghis Khan, he's huge because obviously he led the Mongols and they protected the Silk Roads because they saw the profit in it. They made a lot of money. And so what they did is their patrols, their little forts, organizing the caravanserai, providing security was a big boon to trade because there's a lot of place to travel, a lot of empty areas that could be quite dangerous. And it was Mongolian soldiers under Genghis Khan and further leaders that would make sure that these roads were safe. And the other two are from previous units, and they also retain their importance. So let's look at some things, and we're going to look at cause and effect. Okay, that's what we're going to try to look for. What are some of the things that cause, and what are some of the outcomes? So the name obviously is from the silk. That's the most precious commodity, what it's known for. But again, other goods such as porcelain, spices, and other things were being traded, the physical items. It exists well into before the Christian era. And these are mostly luxury items. All right. So the luxury items, these are traveling in wagons that are being pulled by beasts of burden, many camels being used also. So they didn't sell bulk items in this. They didn't want to they weren't selling champa rice along this. They're trying to sell items that are very expensive and have a high cost when they are received. And the further down the road you go, the more expensive the goods get. Something else is being traded. Buddhism is especially being traded. Now, Buddhism is going to start in India, as we know, and then it's going to travel north along these roads, and then it's going to travel into East Asia and into parts of Central Asia. All right, so that's one thing that's being traded. Islam is also going to be traded up and down these roads as people go from the Middle East, like from Baghdad, which is a major stop along the way. And their merchants are also traveling up and down these roads, and they are spreading Islamic culture. You also, let's just look real fast into Buddhism. Buddhism, as we know, it has a high impact of people who are poor, but these people here are not necessarily poor, but the construct of, again, the goals of Buddhism that we suffer because we desire things, and the way to end this is to way to end suffering is to kill desire, it does have a lot of appeal to many other groups. Buddhism, as it becomes more popular and is growing among the wealthier social classes, it's also changing a little bit. It's starting to make very ornate temples, and it's starting to have a lot of money involved. So there, within Buddhism, you can go to that original aspect of having the idea of suffering, and it's appealing to poor people, but as it grows on, it's going to become more commercialized, with more wealth that's tangible and seeing. Buddhism, it's going to have an outward change because of this new wealth, and you're going to start having very ornate and expensive temples with lots of wealth being in the buildings itself, and lots of wealth being exchanged in the community of the Buddhist community. So this is an outward change, and the cause of this outward change is the connection of Buddhism, not just as an idea, but physically to these networks of exchange where a lot of money is coming in, and people are obviously putting money into their belief system. Inwardly, Buddhism also starts going through this change. One thing that happens is it inwardly changes from basically being a concept without God, without a God figure, and then eventually the Buddha is elevated into a deity, a deified status. And this is shown very much in Mahayana Buddhism, that is spreading rapidly throughout East Asia, India, and Central Asia, and then into Southeast Asia. And it really is going on, and this becomes a dominant form of Buddhism. So the idea after Buddha was made into a deity, this is a cause of Mahayana Buddhism, and it's also going along with the idea of the wealth of Buddhism that starts to really grow in this time. Buddhism, as it goes into contact with the Middle East, again, we've mentioned Baghdad and Persia, these areas here, it starts taking on aspects of Zoroastrianism, which was, a very small but obvious monotheistic religion, and it blends. This is called syncretic. All right, so they have this syncreticism that happens within Buddhism, and again, it's another internal change. And what happens, many of the rituals of Zoroastrianism are blended into Buddhism, and this is a little more popular in Central Asia, but it also finds its way along these networks as Mahayana Buddhism becomes more dominant. Islam, again, is also going to start spreading through these trade routes. So we have goods being exchanged, and these are luxury items mostly. They're very expensive. They're being protected by the Mongols and their forts and their soldiers. We have a cultural change that Buddhism is adapting. And it's the reason for this change is it's getting very much involved in where there's a lot of cash and a lot of money exchanging hands, and it starts becoming wealthier. It leaves that original idea that it was basically dominated by people who were poor and escaping from the untouchable caste system, the untouchables in the caste system of India. So the other thing that's going to be spreading along the Silk Road is technology. Chinese technology, such as gunpowder, eventually is going to start coming out, and it's going to go into West Asia and eventually affect areas, the Ottomans, the Safavids, and the Mughals, and make them gunpowder empires once they start using it for more than rockets, and they start using it and they weaponize it. Other goods that are being traded there, you have compasses, astrolabes, paper money, a lot of innovations which are occurring in China, beginning prototype banking systems. They're all going to start spreading westward, as well as knowledge that's coming from the House of Learning in Baghdad is going to start making its way east. So you have these cultural, these technological trades and exchanges that are happening throughout this trade route. So again, the Silk Road, one of the effects that it has is an increase in technology, a modification of technology, and the spreading of technology. And also you have the idea of economics changing with paper money, lines of credit. This was something, an innovation that happens in banking houses in China, and it spreads westward. And as other areas take this on, they adapt it to meet their needs. Finally, disease is going to spread along the Silk Road. And this is going to connect the disease and it's traveling up and down the Silk Road and also through other trade routes. And the big one that's going to hit is the bubonic plague, which is going to end up wiping about half of Europe by the time it gets to Europe. And it's getting to Europe through the Silk Road, but also through trade routes and the boats that take goods that land in Constantinople and Cairo and land in Italy. It's also traveling heavily through Dar al-Islam. It's going heavily through East Asia. And we know it did start with the Mongols, that they brought the bubonic plague along with them. So I guess we're going to have our takeaways is that let's look at our essential question. And that question was, what were the causes and effects of the growth of trade network of exchange? The cause of it was the need to transpose goods and have increased trade. A big cause of the growth of the trade is the Mongols securing the trade routes in East Asia and then passing on through Central Asia, which they also controlled. That made the route safe. So that's a big cause of the increase in trade. The effects are increases in technology, modification of religions, especially Buddhism. And you have, again, gunpowder, astrolabes, compasses, paper money, banking systems, lines of credit. These are economic changes that all result from the effects of the Silk Road. So that's it for this lesson. And you should definitely be able to list some causes and effects when you're addressing some of your questions. The big picture is the causes and effects that happen because of the Silk Road. And we'll later be looking at the Indian Ocean trade route and the Trans-Saharan trade route. So thank you for joining and have a great day.